That winter night, the cat heard something unusual, a soft creak behind the old fence, where frost-clung grass tangled around splintered wood. He stilled, ears pricking, but the sound faded into silence, leaving only the faint rustle of his own breath clouding the air. It wasn't the first night he'd come to this place. For weeks, maybe longer, time blurred in the endless stretch of hunger and cold, he'd lingered at the edge of the estate, his paws leaving faint imprints in frost that melted with dawn. His cries, soft and low, were swallowed by the wind, unheard and unanswered, as though the world beyond the fence had no space left for things like him. But that night was different. He almost turned away. Almost. A light, faint and wavering, blinked on behind the cracked kitchen window. It wasn't much, barely enough to cut through the thick night air, but it painted a faint glow across the overgrown garden. The tangled grass shimmered faintly beneath it, and the cat, cautious, took a slow step forward, ears flattening as if the light might vanish with a breath. The window was half fogged from within, but there was a shadow moving beyond it. A figure, slow and careful, pausing now and then as though uncertain. No words reached him, no sounds of greeting or dismissal, only the shifting shape and the sudden scrape of something set down on the windowsill. When the figure retreated into the house, the light dimmed to a soft glow, and he saw it, a small ceramic bowl, placed just outside the window, its rim catching beads of water in the cold. It wasn't food, not yet, but it was something. The cat hesitated, paws pressing into the frostbitten earth. His hunger was not just for food, it was for acknowledgement, for the soft murmur of presence, for the quiet confirmation that his cry, even if unheard by words, was felt in some deeper, silent place. But no footsteps followed, no voice called. The light remained steady, the shadow vanished into the house's depths, and the night stretched long and quiet around him. Still, for the first time in many nights, the cat did not turn away. Instead, he sat by the window, near but not touching, his body curled tightly against the night's cold. The air thickened with frost, but his breathing slowed, the sharp edges of his fear dulled by the simple fact that someone had seen enough to leave something behind. And though the silence lingered, heavy and unbroken, the cat stayed. The next night, the wind was sharper. It cut through the silence like the edge of broken glass, rattling dry branches against the fence, carrying the faint smell of rain long before it arrived. The cat crouched low beneath the brambles, his thin fur flattened by the chill. He waited, though he couldn't say for what, only that something inside him, brittle and persistent, held him there. For a long while, nothing stirred. The house beyond the fence remained dark, the windows blank, the garden silent except for the restless whisper of wind through dead grass. His belly tightened with emptiness, but it wasn't just hunger that gnawed at him tonight. It was the weight of being unseen, the quiet ache of a cry that dissolved into the night without ever reaching a listening ear. But then, a sound, soft and deliberate, the faint scuff of a shoe against the floorboards, the creak of the kitchen window easing open just a fraction. His ears twitched, his body tense and alert, though his paws stayed rooted in place. The shadow appeared again, hesitating at the window's edge, a slow breath clouding the glass. This time, the hand held more than a bowl. A shallow dish was lowered carefully, filled with fragments of something pale and delicate, fish perhaps, or soft scraps of bread soaked through with milk. The dish was placed just beyond the windowsill, within reach of the tangled garden. The figure didn't speak, didn't gesture, just placed the food and retreated, the window left slightly ajar as though to let the night itself bear witness. The light remained on, a steady glow that did not beckon, but did not reject either. The cat inched forward, his steps measured and hesitant, paws pressing softly into the damp grass. He sniffed the dish, ears flattening against imagined threats, but no hand reached for him, no sudden movement disturbed his approach. He ate in silence, each bite small and tentative, the food's taste unfamiliar, yet comforting in its quiet offering. But when the food was gone, when the dish lay empty beneath the dim light, he did not immediately turn away. His body remained curled low, but his eyes lifted to the window, to the soft glow behind the glass. He did not expect words, nor touch, only the steady presence of a light, left burning for no reason other than to mark that he had been seen. A breath of rain touched his whiskers, cool and fine. The cat blinked slowly, his body still tense yet softened by the simple act of being witnessed, if only for a moment. The light flickered faintly, but did not go out, and so he stayed, waiting in the hush between rain and night, in the small, fragile space where absence met the faintest echo of presence. The rain deepened in the nights that followed, falling in slow, steady drifts that whispered against the house and softened the earth beneath the cat's paws. He kept returning, each evening threading a silent path beneath the overgrown fence, his steps weaving through shadows and memory alike. Hunger still drew him, yes, but something else now, a fragile thread of expectation, as though his presence were being quietly acknowledged, even if no words were spoken. But that night, something changed. He reached the window to find the light already burning, the dish already waiting. But this time, the window was not merely ajar. It was open, wide enough for the night's damp air to slip through, for the faint scent of warmth from inside to drift out. The scent was subtle, a hint of bread perhaps, or old timber softened by rain. His ears twitched, his body tensed. He hesitated, paws braced against the wet ground, the pull of the familiar mingling with a sharper edge of uncertainty. Inside, the figure moved differently, not hurried or hesitant, but slower, almost measured, as if they were no longer expecting to be unseen. They did not look out directly, but their posture had shifted, shoulders turned slightly toward the window, hands resting lightly on the frame. The cat remained where he was, pressed low to the earth, watching. His tail flicked once, sharp and questioning. The rain slid down his back, soaking his fur, but he did not move. The open window, the scent of home, the light left on. It was too much, too soon. His world was built on quiet distances, on the safety of being unseen. And this was almost an invitation. Almost. A low, sudden gust of wind rattled the fence behind him, sending a tremor through the tangled brambles. He flinched, ears flattening, and for a heartbeat, he almost bolted. But then, the figure inside shifted, a movement so slight it might have gone unnoticed if he weren't watching so closely. They reached forward, not to close the window, but to place something on the floor just beyond it. A folded cloth, soft and worn, its color dulled by age. A gesture, simple and deliberate, left without explanation. The cloth was not food. It was not shelter. It was only a thing left where it could be seen, as though to say, if you choose to come closer, there will be a place for you here. The cat's breath caught, a low ripple of air in his throat. He did not approach, not yet, but his body eased fractionally, his paws relaxing their grip on the damp ground. The rain thickened, drumming softly against the roof, but beneath it, a new sound emerged, the slow rhythmic breathing of the human inside, steady and present. And though the window remained open, the space between them still wide and uncertain, the cat stayed, not in fear, but in a quiet, waiting stillness, as though testing the edges of this unfamiliar, silent invitation. Outside, the rain softened, and the air thickened with the scent of wet earth, and something else, a faint trace of warmth, of something that might, in time, resemble home. The fourth night was not like the others. The cat returned as he always did, his path worn now through the brittle grass and the gnarled fence slats. He moved with quiet certainty, expecting the low glow behind the kitchen window, the faint breath of warmth seeping through the gap. But when he reached the garden's edge, the night greeted him not with light, but with darkness. The window was shut tight, no dish waited, no folded cloth marked the ground. The house, once a soft presence in the quiet hours, stood mute and impenetrable, its walls a deeper shadow against the sky. The air was colder tonight, the wind sharper, and the ground beneath his paws felt brittle, as though even the earth had turned against him. He stood for a long moment, ears pricked forward, eyes narrowed against the dark. The silence pressed harder now, heavier, thick with something that tasted faintly of loss. His body tensed as he crept closer to the window. Each step weighted with the fragile hope that something had simply shifted, that the pattern was not truly broken. But as he reached the sill, the glass reflected only his own dim shape, distorted and thin against the night. His breath fogged the surface faintly, but no warmth met it from the other side. No shadow moved within. The light had been left off. The door remained shut. A sharp wind caught the edge of his fur, and he shivered, stepping back instinctively. The absence felt deliberate, though no sound or gesture confirmed it. The cat circled once, twice, his paws marking faint traces in the damp earth, his body low and uncertain. It was not just the missing light, it was the silence behind it, a silence too complete, as though the house itself had drawn inward, closing its fragile boundaries against the world. For the first time in many nights, he considered leaving. His body coiled tight with indecision, every muscle poised between retreat and stubborn persistence. But even as the thought formed, to vanish back into the tangled dark where no one waited, where his presence meant nothing, he found his paws rooted, as if the ground itself had claimed them. He almost turned away, but then something shifted. Not light, not sound, but the faintest scent carried on the wind. It was subtle, easily lost beneath the sharper tang of wet earth and old wood, but it reached him nonetheless, a trace of something familiar, something human, the scent of soap, perhaps, or damp wool, a marker of presence that lingered even when everything else had faded. The cat stilled, his breath catching in his throat. The house remained silent, the window unlit, but the scent was real. It was enough to keep him there, balanced on the edge of leaving but held fast by something he could not name. And so, as the night deepened and the cold pressed closer, he stayed, not out of hope, but out of quiet defiance. The absence was sharp, a wound of its own, but it was not complete. There was still something here, something unseen but undeniable, and for that, he could not turn away. By the fifth night, the air had turned colder still, wrapping the world in a thin sheath of frost that crackled beneath the cat's paws as he returned to the familiar edge of the fence. The grass, once tangled and damp, now lay flat and stiff, as though the cold itself had pressed it down. His breath rose in soft, white clouds, vanishing almost as soon as it formed. He approached cautiously, his steps slow and deliberate, but he carried no expectation this time. The pattern had been broken, the light extinguished, the silence thickened, and yet he came. Perhaps it was habit. Perhaps it was the faintest echo of memory clinging to his bones. Or perhaps it was something quieter still, a fragile thread of resilience that refused to be severed. The window remained dark, the house silent, but as he reached the edge of the garden, something stirred, a shift so slight it might have been the wind, except that it was not. A faint scrape against the inside floorboards, the hush of footsteps moving deliberately, almost cautiously. The cat froze, his body low and tense, ears pricked and tail still, his eyes locked on the window, waiting, then a light. Not the soft, ambient glow he had known before, but a single flicker, sharp and hesitant, like a candle's flame catching against the dark. It flared, wavered, then steadied, casting a thin sliver of light across the kitchen. His breath caught, ears flicking forward. A figure moved beyond the glass, slower this time, deliberate, as though weighing each step, each breath. The window creaked open, not wide, but enough to let the thin light spill out into the cold. There was no sound of a dish being placed, no folded cloth this time, only the soft scrape of fingers brushing the windowsill, the slow, tentative slide of something small left behind. A single piece of fish, its pale flesh glistening faintly in the thin light. Not a meal, not even enough to fill the hollow ache in his belly, but it was something, an offering, quiet and deliberate, left without expectation or demand. The figure did not speak, did not gesture. They remained a shadow behind the glass, a shape outlined by the thin light, their presence marked only by the faint rise and fall of breath against the window's cold. The cat crept closer, drawn not by hunger alone, but by the delicate thread of presence stitched into the night air. He ate slowly, each bite a careful, measured act, as though to savor the moment, to extend it beyond its fragile boundaries. When the fish was gone, he did not turn away. He remained there, his body curved, low against the frost-hardened earth, his eyes lifted to the window where the figure still stood, unmoving, unspeaking. The silence stretched between them, thin and trembling, like a thread of spun glass, delicate enough to shatter at the slightest breath, but strong enough for now to hold. And as the night deepened, as the light behind the window softened to a muted glow, the cat's breathing slowed, his body easing into the cold with a quiet, tentative trust. He had not been welcomed inside. The distance between them remained vast, but someone had stayed, and that, for now, was enough. The frost had thickened overnight, clinging to the brittle edges of grass and the cracked wood of the fence like a thin, stubborn skin. The cat's paws pressed silently into the stiff ground as he approached the house again, each step tentative yet steady, as though his body remembered the path even when his mind hesitated. His breath rose in quiet clouds, fading into the sharp air almost as soon as it formed. He paused just beyond the fence, his ears pricking forward. The house looked as it always had, quiet, its walls softened by the glow of a single light behind the kitchen window. But something was different tonight, something too subtle to name at first. The window itself was not just open slightly, but eased wider than before, letting the light spill out in a soft, gentle pool that stretched further into the garden. He crept closer, each step measured, his body curved low but not pressed tightly to the ground as it had been before. The garden, once tangled with damp grass, now lay muted beneath the frost, the shapes of wilted plants casting long shadows. In the pale light, his whiskers twitched at the faint scent of warmth, the subtle trace of bread, old wood, and the sharper edge of soap and wool that marked the human's presence. Near the window, a small dish had been placed just beyond the sill. It wasn't filled with scraps this time, nor with just water. Instead, there was a shallow bowl of milk, its surface smooth and still, and beside it a folded cloth, soft and worn with age, its corners slightly frayed as though it had been handled often. The cloth wasn't much, just a piece of fabric, but it held the quiet weight of intention, a silent signal left for no one but him. Inside, the figure was seated at the table, their posture quiet and still, not hunched or hesitant as before. Their head was turned slightly toward the window, though they did not look directly at the cat, as though their presence was offered without demand or expectation. The light from within painted faint shadows across the walls, the outline of their body softened by distance and glass. The cat hesitated, his paws brushing lightly against the frostbitten earth. He could feel the pull of the space inside, the warmth, the stillness, the faint hum of human breath against the night, but crossing the threshold felt too sharp, too abrupt. His body tightened with the familiar ache of almost belonging, the fragile tension of wanting without knowing how to reach. He circled once near the window, his tail low and flicking softly, a faint whisper against the frozen ground. His eyes lifted briefly, catching the human's outline, before lowering again, ears tilting back in caution. His steps drew him closer, inch by inch, until he stood just at the edge of the window's reach, where cold air met the warmer breath of the room inside. The human did not move. They remained seated, hands resting lightly on the table, their posture a silent offering of space. The bowl of milk sat untouched, its smooth surface reflecting the dim light, a quiet invitation that asked nothing and promised only presence. The cloth, its edges gently stirring with the draft from the window, added a softness to the moment, as though the air itself had shifted to allow the cat's waiting body a place to settle. For a long time, the cat stood there, his paws braced, against the chill, his body tense yet softened by the stillness of the scene. His breath slowed, the thin clouds rising steadily into the night. The weight of absence, of unspoken need, coiled tightly in his chest, but the light's quiet presence held it at bay, smoothing the sharp edges into something almost bearable. But instead, he lowered himself onto the ground just beyond the window, his paws tucked neatly beneath him, his body curling into a compact shape against the cold. His eyes remained half-lidded, his ears alert, yet relaxed, as though listening not just to the sounds of the night, but to the subtle rhythm of the human's breath within the house. The night stretched long around them, the silence broken only by the soft drip of melting frost and the distant creak of wind against the eaves. Time slipped past in slow, measured beats, each moment deepening the quiet connection between them. The cat did not eat the milk immediately, nor did he reach for the cloth. He simply stayed, his presence a quiet acknowledgement of the space that had been made for him, the fragile thread of trust stitched into the fabric of the night. Inside, the human's breathing remained steady, their posture unchanged. There were no words, no gestures to break the fragile peace. The light, though soft and muted, did not waver, casting a gentle glow that smoothed the sharp outlines of the house into something almost welcoming. And as the frost thickened once more on the ground, as the air grew colder and the night deeper, the cat stayed, not inside, not fully embraced, but nearer than he had been before. His body, once tight with the readiness to flee, now softened into stillness. His breathing slowed, his eyes half closed as though daring to rest for the first time in nights. The window remained open, the space between them held by a quiet understanding. Neither crossed it fully, but neither retreated. They remained, separate yet present, two shapes outlined by light and shadow, each bearing silent witness to the other's existence. And in that quiet, fragile space, where the sharp cold of the night met the steady warmth of the house, the cat's breathing eased, just a little. The next night arrived shrouded in mist. It crept over the ground in low, pale waves, softening the sharp outlines of fences and garden beds, making the world feel both smaller and more distant. The cat moved through it as though half invisible, his fur dampened by the air, each paw step quiet and certain. The window's light was already on when he arrived. It wasn't a bright, beckoning glow, but a gentle, diffused shimmer that made the surrounding mist seem almost luminous. The air around it felt warmer, though the night remained cold and damp. The dish of milk and the folded cloth were there again, arranged with quiet care as though they had been placed with thought rather than routine. Inside, the figure was seated as before, but something had shifted. Their posture was less rigid, shoulders softened, head lowered slightly as though listening. A small detail, the way their hand rested lightly on the edge of the table, fingers spread and unmoving, suggested not waiting, but simply being. The cat approached, his body loose and fluid, ears tilting forward. He didn't creep as before, didn't brace his paws against the cold earth in readiness to flee. He moved with the careful ease of something learning to trust its own presence. His breath clouded softly in the air, fading into the mist that curled around his legs. This time he did not stop at the window's edge. He stepped forward, one slow, deliberate movement, until his nose brushed the folded cloth. It was soft, faintly warm from the air inside the house, carrying the faint scent of human skin and laundry soap. He nudged it once, a gentle motion, before lowering his body to rest against it. His fur soaked the warmth from the cloth, and his breathing slowed to a steady, unhurried rhythm. Inside, the figure did not move. No voice broke the silence. No hand reached out to touch, but a shift in the air, a soft, almost imperceptible breath, an easing of tension, told the cat that he had been seen, not just observed from a distance, but acknowledged in a way deeper than sight. The night around them thickened with mist, wrapping the world in a quiet cocoon. The sounds of the city beyond were muted into near silence, leaving only the faint drip of condensation from the eaves, the soft shuffle of the cat's breath against the cloth, and the steady, unwavering light from the window. He could have stayed longer. He could have retreated or moved further inside, but he chose to remain there, balanced between the threshold and the garden, his body curled low against the cold, his presence a quiet marker of connection not yet fully realized. And as the figure inside remained still, as the night deepened, and the mist thickened around them, the cat closed his eyes. His breathing slowed into a rhythm that matched the quiet pulse of the house. Not a surrender, but a soft acceptance of the space that had been made, the silent recognition that someone had not only seen him, but had remained. Outside, the mist coiled tighter, but within it, the cat's body softened into sleep, his breath slow and even. The light from the window, though faint, held steady, as though anchoring the fragile connection between them. And though no words were spoken, no promises made, in the quiet breath of that moment, both remained.